Hey, what's up guys, welcome back to the channel. On today's episode, we're going over this 20 volt max half-inch brushless drill driver from DeWALT. We've obviously had this drill quite a bit ever since it first came out. We've definitely put it through its paces on the job or whatnot. So we're gonna go over this tool top to bottom, put it on the track, get some numbers, and see how it stacks up against some of the other drills. So stick with us. So this right here is DeWALT's brushless half-inch heavy-duty hammer drill driver. It's XR for brushless, and it is model number DCD996. They do have other models out like the 998, 999, and all that kind of fun stuff with, power detect and flexible advantage and all that kind of fun stuff. But I believe all those models are generally built off of this model, so it makes sense to talk about this, okay? And one thing I did notice while looking at their marketing page, so we can go over their marketing hype, is they don't generally do a very good job of marketing this tool, right? Whether or not they're a marketing company or tool company or whatnot, we'll have to figure that out. But with that being said, let's go take a look at the marketing hype. So this right here is DeWALT's half-inch heavy-duty hammer drill driver. It features DeWALT's built high-power, high-efficiency brushless motor that delivers up to 75% more runtime, has a 3-mode LED light that lights up dark and confined spaces up to 20 times brighter than the previous model, has a half-inch heavy-duty ratcheting nitro-carburized metal chuck with carbide inserts for superior gripping strength, features the LED spotlight mode, which runs up to 20 minutes, allowing you to do extended work in dark and confined spaces, okay? For a no load speed, it has a 0 to 45 or 450 RPM on 1, 0 to 1,300 RPMs on 2, and 0 to 2,000 RPMs on mode 3. So that's an interesting note, mainly because it does have 3 speeds instead of 2 speeds like most other tools do, right? And unlike all the other manufacturers, they actually use the term called unit watts out to figure out its max power versus inch pounds, okay? It has 3 speed settings, which we've obviously talked about before. It runs in their 20 volt max system or lineup, and on hammer drilling mode, it goes up to 38,250 beats per a minute. It features DeWALT's standard 3-year warranty, 1-year free service, and 90 days money-back guarantee. So as you can see, they don't really do a good job putting that together. I mean, I did have to go to a few other pages and whatnot to actually figure that out, and actually in some parts did have to go look at the instruction manual. So that's actually interesting. So out of all the tool manufacturers, at least ones that we've covered so far, they definitely, or DeWALT does probably the least amount of heavy marketing or whatnot, but let's bring you in closer and take a better look at it. So one thing you see immediately is a side handle, okay? And this is a very interesting side handle, mainly because this side handle is almost entirely all plastic except for the bolt that goes through here. If you have other heavy duty drills, you'll pretty much notice almost all the heavy duty drills that come with the side handle is mostly metal, but DeWALT actually decided to go the route of plastic on this one. And their attachment mechanism, I do think, is a little bit better versus the other ones. And maybe because the attachment mechanism is better, they are able to get away with plastic or whatnot, but haven't had any issues with it, even though we do use this pretty heavily, okay? So with that being said, the other thing to note about it is, out of the 3 drills we've covered so far on this series, the handle on this one is definitely the shortest, right? And that may be something to grab about later. I mean, especially if you're going to break your wrist or whatnot, it is something to grab about. So unlike other manufacturers, this handle actually goes on right around the collar, right before the clutch selection mechanism, right? So it's a full around the drill engagement, and it doesn't look like there's really any friction points or any built-in, indentions or whatever you want to call it. It literally just goes around a collar right here, and you tighten it down by screwing it down hard, right? So one would think, because there's really no indentions or anything like that, it would really turn really easily, right? But this gearbox metal part right here is actually not super smooth. It's smooth in a way, but it's got, like the dimples and imperfections and stuff. So when you tighten it down really hard, it actually doesn't move too much, right? That is something, that was one thing I was concerned about, but it's pretty sturdy, right? And obviously it's held up well. Granted, sometimes you would think plastic that wouldn't hold up too well, but it is still heavy duty, right? And it's lasted all this time, right? So no real issues with that. The benefit of it being plastic is mainly that it is lightweight, right? One thing I would say about this is I do wish it was a little bit longer. And when you are actually putting a lot of heavy usage into this, you're gonna want this side handle to be longer. You know, the longer it is, generally the more leverage you're gonna have with that. So make sure you keep that in mind. All right, moving around to the left part of the drill. So this part of the drill is nothing too familiar, no frills, no thrills. It's the standard DeWalt handle, and it has a variable speed trigger, okay? The variable speed trigger is actually, in a way, very good, mainly, like, you know, mostly all DeWalt tools, mainly because it works generally pretty well. Watch this. This is on mode 1. We'll put it to drill mode, okay? Let's go to mode 2. Mode 3. All right, so that's actually very interesting because it does work pretty well, okay? One thing to note about this is that the variable speed range and the ramp up time actually differs based on which clutch setting you have it on, right? So obviously it will differ based on which gear you have selected, right? And we'll talk about that in a second. But it also ramps up differently, right? So this is clutch mode 1, right? Or clutch selection 1. And watch if I pull this down, watch it ramp up. Right, there's like a split second ramp up time. Let's move this to clutch setting 11, right? It doesn't ramp up, I mean, it ramps up a lot quicker, right? But it's almost like a no ramp up, right? So if I go to, let's say to mode 3, right? And this is on clutch selection 11. It instantly goes pretty much max speed. But if I dial it down to mode 1, or clutch selection 1, there's a very slight ramp up time, but the top speed of it definitely changes. So with that being said, with the combination of, you know, gearbox selection and clutch setting and a variable speed trigger, you could really fine tune and dial it into exactly what you need. That's just something to point out because not all drills will do that, but most drills with electronic clutches will do that. Well, maybe not most, at least all the top end ones that we generally see, right? So with that being said, let's go ahead and point out the clutch part here. So this obviously has clutch selections, right, from 1 to 11. Right, and here it will also have a drill mode, and if you go all the way, it will have a hammer drill mode, which is just a little bit different than their previous, you know, brushed models, which had like 2-color selection and stuff like that. But the thing I really wanted to point out with this clutch setting thing here is that it is a electronic clutch or electronic actuated clutch or whatever you want to call it, right? It's not a manual type clutch, so it will shut the drill off after it reaches that threshold. But the downside to almost all electronic clutches is that it does take an additional delay in order for that clutch to actuate in a way, right? In order for it to take that measurement, process it, and then shut the drill off, right? So let's see if we can demonstrate that for you real quick, okay? We'll drop this all the way to gear mode 1. Put this down to gear clutch setting 0 or 1. All right, so watch. We'll hold this as tight. Right? So in like the Makita drill or whatnot that we viewed earlier, on clutch setting 1, it's actually very light. It'll be very low threshold before it engages. Right? So even with this one, if I'm going really slow, it won't always engage at a very low setting. So it almost depends, it feels like sometimes, how fast you're going and when it hits that threshold, when it shuts off or whatnot. But that is something to point out, especially if you're doing a lot of delicate work or whatnot. You just have to be very, accurate with your variable speed skills or trigger skills, whatever you want to call it, right? So that's what it is with the trigger. Standard back and forth, forward, reverse, triggered or switch that is on almost all the drills, almost everywhere. Nothing too much going on there. There actually was a sticker here that said made in USA. It seemed to disappeared somewhere with gold parts and materials. The other thing I note about this is it's a pretty standard DeWalt grip. If you're used to any DeWalt tool, this is gonna feel pretty standard. Nothing out of the ordinary. It does have a belt clip that comes on. You do have to install it when you do get it out of the box. I do remember doing that. And on this side, nothing else really too much is going on. On the back side here, pretty standard. You have, you know, brushless motor. It's flat. There's also obviously a place to hook a lanyard or something like that if you were to use something like that, but in this case we don't. And then on this, the right side of the drill is pretty much the standard, right? There's holes here so you could move the belt clip here if you did want to put it on that side, but other than that, not too much going on this side, right? So now let's go look at the front. So the front of this is obviously where a lot of the interesting parts happen, because, you know, this is all this here. But this drill actually has a 3-mode LED setting, right? So if you look closer here, there's one, you know, on the far left side. When you squeeze it, the light will come on. It won't be super bright, okay? If you put it to the middle selection setting, obviously it gets a little bit brighter. And then if you put it to the third setting, the light is the brightest, okay? So let's check that out again. Low, medium, high, okay? And the good thing, or the interesting thing about this drill is that when you put it on mode 3, it's actually really bright and it will stay on for about 20 minutes, which actually, you know, a lot of times you think it's a gimmick and stuff like that, but it has actually been proven to be very useful in certain situations. One good situation I can tell you from experience is when you're under a cabinet, working or either working under a cabinet or in a cabinet and you're trying to drill a 4-inch hole for the drain pipe to really come up, right? Or even if you're trying to drill small holes to, you know, feed the pegs and stuff like that, and you're trying to get it all connected, it's easy to just take this one drill with you under that cabinet instead of having to take the drill and the light, right? Mainly because it does stay on and it is generally quite bright. So that is something to be thoughtful of. I mean, it is sometimes in marketing hype will make it sound like a gimmick, but it has actually been proven to be useful in many situations, okay? So with other than that being said, here is the top of the part of the drill. This drill actually has 3 gear settings, like 1, 2, and 3. It is often very difficult, as you saw earlier, to get it in the exact selection that you want, right? 1 and 3 is generally pretty easy because it's just either full here or full here, right? But trying to get it in the middle sometimes can be a challenge. If you do use this drill day in, day out and use it a lot, getting it there is not too much of a problem. But sometimes where the motor stops will not be in the right spot in order for you to move this switch to one spot. And that's not only specific to this drill, it's generally happened to pretty much all the drills that we ever used. Every once in a while you'll be in a spot, you know, where you turn the motor off and you can't really slide the selector back. But on this drill, mainly because you have 3 settings, it actually seems to be more frequent turn that way. But, you know, I'm not going to complain about that, mainly because it's not too big enough to actually halt you from buying or not buying this drill, at least in my opinion. Other than that, here's the metal chuck here. It's generally pretty well. I'm not sure exactly what they mean by nitro-carburized, but the knurling on here is pretty good. And as the carbide inserts, as they claim in the marketing hype, generally holds pretty well. Any of the top end drills or whatnot, you usually don't have any real problems with the clutch. I have had other problems with other DeWalt clutch or other DeWalt drills, I meant chucks, that had basic chucks that chuck wobble and stuff like that. But this one, it doesn't seem to be generally too bad. All right, guys, so those numbers did not go by as fast as I thought they were gonna go. So let's go take a look at the numbers, okay? So this DCD996 with a 2 amp hour battery on the 5/16 inch by 6 inch lag test. First run, 3.57, peak torque 127. Second run, 3.53, peak torque 121. Third run, 3.14, peak torque 112. It did have to complete that challenge on speed 2. It was not able to do it on speed 3. And if you average 3 runs, comes in at 3.41 with a peak torque of 120. All right, moving on to the 1/2 inch by 8 inch lag test. First run did not finish. Second run did not finish. Third run did not finish. The peak torque average across all of those 3 runs is 294.67 inch-pounds. And that was obviously done on speed 1, okay? I mean, does it really matter if it didn't finish? Moving on to 3/4 inch auger test. First run, 7.11 seconds. Second run, 6.5 seconds. And it was actually able to complete that challenge on speed 3. And if you do go back and look at it, it kind of felt like it was going to stall out, but it didn't, and it did complete the challenge, okay? So average those 2 runs coming at 6.81 seconds, all right? Moving on to the 1/4 inch masonry test. First run, 5.57 seconds. Second run, 5.26 seconds. Third run, 5.25 seconds. Average of 3 runs comes in at 5.36 seconds. And the peak torque measured across all the tests that we did came in at 327 inch-pounds, all right? So this DCD996 kitted with this 2 amp hour battery also weighs in at a whopping 4 pounds, 4.7 ounces, all right? So let's go look at the total performance number of this drill. So the DCD996 with a 2 amp hour battery has a total performance number of 10.22 seconds plus did not finish. So where does that put that? Currently on the leaderboard, it puts it right behind the Milwaukee 2804 with a 3 amp hour high output battery, which had a score of 16.68, but it does put it in front of the Makita XPH compact drill, XPH12 compact drill, which had a score of 26.4 and also did not finish, all right? So what can we really say about this drill, right? So this drill, just looking at it, you can tell it's probably looks unproportional, right? You really should. It looks like you should be using it with at least a 5 amp hour battery, and you probably should, right? That's how they kit it if you are going to buy this as a kit, right? So now it's going to be a good time to tell you we are going to split this video into 2 parts, mainly because this video is getting pretty long. So this is going to be part 1 where we really stop it with the 2 amp hour battery test. Stay tuned for part 2 where we do test it with a 5 amp hour battery and a flexible 9 amp hour battery to really unlock the total performance of this drill and see what potential it can get to, all right? So just in closing this out, let's go ahead and talk about the basic summary of this drill just in case you're going to stop watching it here, right? So this DCD996, what can we say? It's a great drill, right? It's a pretty much heavy duty flagship, big boy drill if you want to call it that. It's in their 20 volt lineup. It has 3 speeds, 1, 2, and 3. It has a single collar for clutch mode settings and drill mode settings. And speaking of the clutch, it is a electronic actuated clutch. So once it hits that threshold, it actually disengages or turns off the power to the motor in a way, all right? It has a really nice chuck, if you want to call it that. And it does come with a handle and is a pretty short side handle, and on the side handle it does have a spot for a drill stop rod for those of you who are going to be doing heavy duty hammer drilling, which I can't imagine you will be, but we're going to be talking about that sometime soon. But if you did want to use a stop rod, it is there, and it does, you know, hold into place by you cranking down the handle, and it will lock that rod right between the bolt head and this plastic, so it will work pretty well, okay? What other feature does it have? It actually has a spotlight feature. So spotlight feature, there's 3 modes on the bottom of the drill, 1, 2, and 3. If you put it on mode 3, the LED will light up pretty bright, right? And the spotlight for it will stay on for about 20 minutes, okay? Is it a gimmick? At first it kind of seemed like it, but actually using it in many dark places, like under a cabinet, in a closet, right above the soffit, which I would not use above soffit because it's a pretty heavy drill. I mean, unless you really need that power. It's actually been pretty helpful. But under the cabinet, drilling, you know, like a big 4-inch hole, even a 2.5-inch hole, right? It's actually been really helpful, okay? So, is it a gimmick? I would say not really. But that's just my take on that, right? So let's go take a look at something else about this drill before we close this part of the video out, right? So if you look at the 1/4 inch masonry test, it came in at an average score of 5.36 seconds. And if you're looking at the leaderboard right now, you're looking at it thinking, wow, that's actually really fast, right? Because if you compare it to the Milwaukee Gen 3 fuel drill, right, the M18 Fuel 2804, the M18 Fuel 2804 with a 3 amp hour battery had a masonry score of 7.33 seconds, right? That's, you know, a lot slower than 5.36, right? And if you pair that drill with the 5 amp hour XC battery, it came in at a score of 5.91 seconds, which is still slower than the 5.36 seconds, right? But if you look at that 2804 Gen 3 with a high output 8 amp hour battery, that score comes in at 5.30 seconds, which is very close, if not almost the same score as the 5.36 seconds with this DeWalt and this 2 amp hour battery, right? So why is that? So the biggest things that come into, you know, hammer drilling are mainly the impact energy and the speed, right? Impact energy being pretty much how much impact energy does it do when the hammer function actually hits, you know, presses down on the drill bit, right? So that info I was not actually able to find anywhere. DeWalt probably has it somewhere, right? Are the rumors floating around on the internet? Probably. Are any of those confirmed? I can't imagine any of those are confirmed, because if they are, I just wasn't able to find them. But the other thing to note about this is this drill has a variable speed range between 0 to 2,000, okay? The interesting thing about this drill is that when you put it into hammer drill mode, it actually picks up an additional 250 RPM, right? That's interesting, right? So because on hammer drill, it actually goes to 0 to 2,250. Whereas almost all the other drills, at least the information that I was able to find, the hammer drill RPM range of those hammer drills, let's take for instance the Gen 3 Fuel 2804, goes up to 0 to 2,000 RPM, right? So that may have something to do with it, right? But the other thing it has to do with it is this drill on hammer drilling function actually has higher BPM, right? Beats per minute, right? So whereas the Gen 3 Fuel will have a 32,000 beats per minute, and the XPH07 has a 31,500 beats per minute, and the Makita XPH12 had a 30,000 beats per minute. This drill tops all of them and has a 38,250 beats per minute, right? So wow, that's you know, quite a bit. That's about 6,250 BPM more than the M18 Fuel, and you know, like 8,250 BPM more than the Makita XPH12, and you know, maybe around 7-ish thousand BPM more than the XPH07, right? So that explains pretty much why this drill is probably one of the better hammer drills, right? Will it really be able to compete with the dedicated SDS drill? I don't know. One day we're gonna have to test that, right? We will test that one day. I just don't know when the day's gonna come around. But out of the hammer drill, in terms of the hammer function, is this probably the best one so far? Probably. Is it gonna get better if you add better batteries to it? Probably. So we're gonna go ahead and test that sometime in the next part of this series, right? So part 2. So make sure you stay tuned for that. So in case you didn't know. So that's all we can really say about the drill right now. Like I said, stay tuned for part 2. If you have any questions, thoughts, or comments, let me know. Otherwise, have a great day, and then we'll see you guys next time.